Happy March Madness, guys. The big dance is finally kicked off. It's an exciting time. Obviously, up in Green Bay, they never really even had a dance to begin with. But what's up? Welcome into the Fireside Bears YouTube channel. Usayd Koshaw and Max Smith. You can follow us on Twitter at Usayd Koshaw and at Max Smith ESM. Before we get into all the action, guys, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, rate and review it too. Give us a thumbs up on this video and follow Fireside Bears on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Fireside Bears. Max, it's been a couple days compared to the last time we spoke. The Bears have added 2 more free agents. Allen Robinson's going to Los Angeles, not joining, but cross-turning. I mean, going to be playing against Khalil Mack, obviously. They're going to live in the same city. Maybe they'll be roomies. I don't even know. And then, we got guys like Bilal Nichols, Elijah Wilkinson, Alex Bars, a couple of the Bears' own free agents getting opportunities elsewhere. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Obviously, today is St. Patrick's Day for us recording. This will be up tomorrow, so it won't be, but I hope you had a fantastic St. Patrick's Day. Today is an interesting situation. At least just for the Chicago Bears. If there's one thing we've learned thus far, it's to be patient. Ryan Poles is really forcing us to be patient, whereas Ryan Pace was not as patient as a general manager. Like you mentioned, Allen Robinson got a $43 million contract with the Los Angeles Rams. Many are speculating whether or not the Chicago Bears could have matched that. That's over 3 years, by the way. So it's not as large as maybe he was anticipating, but his value most certainly decreased after this year's performance. If he had not taken the franchise tag, he might have gotten a bigger contract, but shoulda, coulda, woulda. We're seeing a lot of guys go, and we're only seeing a few guys come in, but it's been very strategic as to specifically who's coming in. We're not hearing a lot of rumors about the Bears being really in on a couple of guys that eventually don't sign with us. We don't really hear it until these guys have already been signed, which one tells me that Poles is moving in silence, and 2, being very strategic in who he's picking. So guys like Nicholas Morrow, who didn't even play last year, but had a fantastic explosive 2020, had injury issues with his foot, unfortunately suffered in preseason from the Las Vegas Raiders. This guy is an incredibly fast linebacker. He's basically Roquan Smith, but these two actually have like ridiculous skill sets. Like if I would compare Nicholas Morrow, I would say Roquan Smith, just because they're fast sideline to sideline. They have fantastic coverage abilities. Nicholas Morrow is also fantastic at crushing and collapsing the gaps from a free blitz, perspective. He's on a 1-year, $3 million contract, which is a prove it deal, because they are taking some risk with his injury. But if he does end up having that bright side, you're looking at a fantastic addition. And then as well in the offensive line, because Ryan Poles kept talking about it, and finally we got it. We got Lucas Patrick over from the Green Bay Packers. This one's a bit of a steal because Lucas Patrick was one of the most favored offensive linemen in Green Bay over the past year or so. Aaron Rodgers went out and said good things about him. Matt LaFleur said good things about him. Luke Getsy said good things about him. Just about everybody's had good things to say about him. And he signed to a 2-year for $8 million contract, which is, pretty good, not going to lie. We're looking at him potentially walking into that starting center role. But what's really cool about Patrick is you can move him between the guard and the center. He's just an incredible player, goes to the whistle. You'll find a ton of highlights of him just playing beyond the whistle. And he's just a total locker room, like glue guy, as Ryan Poles literally said. He is our glue guy. So they're looking for him to bring some leadership to that offensive line. Anchor possibly at the center. We still have to see how that shakes out. Sam Mustipher was tendered, remember, so he's still on the roster. But still, we're looking at a pretty good addition from the Green Bay Packers.
I'm going to start with Lucas Patrick because, like you mentioned, my biggest observation is, besides the versatility, anytime you steal someone from the Packers via free agency that Aaron Rodgers absolutely praises, your actions speak louder than your words, and you effectively have pissed Aaron Rodgers off. I'm just saying. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was mad when they cut Randall Cobb, and they literally got Randall Cobb back. It's kind of the same thing here because you really don't hear Aaron Rodgers praising some of these younger offensive linemen on the Packers, more so the older guys. But you look at Lucas Patrick, you kind of hit every nail on the head. The reason the Bears sign him is simply because, number one, you have that familiarity with Luke Getsy's scheme. Number two, he's a veteran who was an undrafted free agent who Luke Getsy basically saw come up in the league. And you look at the Packers, they've done a great job. And I noted this on the weekly podcast, episode 82. So go check that out. Green Bay's done a great job just in terms of drafting and developing offensive linemen. It's one of the deepest positional groups on their roster. So it's finally great to see the Bears getting a player that is going to come in and basically, like Ryan Poles mentioned, be the one that brings this unit together. Now, with that said, is this offensive line completely finished? No, there's still a couple additions that need to be made. We saw that the Bears lost Alex Bars, who we'll get to in just a moment. All right. So the signing of Patrick is familiarity and scheme fit. And I'm going to say what I said on Monday in the video where we talked about Larry Ogunjobi and broke that sign down, is that the Bears are doing what's right, even though it may not necessarily be popular. And sometimes doing what's right, even though it isn't popular, is actually better than doing what's popular, even though it may not be right. The popular thing to do would have been to go land a big fish like a Brandon Sheriff and spend all your money, because there's just a certain prestige associated with having a star player on the offensive line that the Bears have never really had. But the right thing to do is find someone who fits your scheme. So one of the big actions that we're seeing that's coming out of Chicago is more so scheme fit, and scheme fit is of utmost importance to this coaching staff as well as to Ryan Poles. Now, you break down the Nick Morrow signing, I believe it's like a 1 year, $5 million deal, something like that. So it's a relatively cheap deal. Now, the Bears are drafting this deal up, and they drafted this contract up, I should say, in such a way to go ahead and basically take a 1 year gamble. So next year, when the Bears have a lot of cap space, then what's going to happen is that they can either ink Morrow to an extension, or they can go ahead and basically let Morrow go without any cost. And then that's essentially what this is going to be. Now, there's another Bears free agent that's actually expected to sign with the Bears. That is Equanimeous St. Brown, Aaron Wilson of Pro Football Network, who is one of the most trusted insiders, despite some controversy about political comments in the past. The guy still has sources, I can tell you that, because he's actually the one who told me 2 hours before Jadeveon Clowney was supposed to be traded that Jadeveon Clowney's getting traded to the Seattle Seahawks. This was 2 or 3 years ago. But anyways, the point is Equanimeous St. Brown's another one, okay? Is that the Bears are merely signing this wide receiver because of scheme fit and because of his kind of low risk, high upside type thing. You know, the market for Marquez Valdes-Scantling has not settled yet. The market for guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, you can tell that the longer it drags on, it's still iffy. I still would be happy with I'd be happy with St. Brown, who I loved coming out of Notre Dame 4 years ago. And I would certainly be happy with Juju Smith-Schuster. But I think overall, Equanimeous St. Brown's a compliment to Darnell Mooney. What do you think?
Yeah, St. Brown's a guy who can stretch the field. He's fast, right? He served kind of that wide receiver 4 position in Green Bay. He kind of sat behind guys like Marquez Valdes-Scantling, of course, Vontae Adams, and basically Randall Cobb for the past year. He's kind of the wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 up in Green Bay. He's had an interesting history. He's had some issues with some drops, specifically in some big time games. But once more, it's not a bad signing. It's a good signing specifically for depth, right? Which we don't have. And you're right. This is a good compliment for Mooney. And this literally just broke 5 minutes ago, people, in case you were wondering why we're talking about this. And tomorrow, I'm sure you guys are going to know. But yeah, we just found out. So this is the live reaction. Look at that. Yeah, I don't love it. I don't hate it. I'd be interested in see what the contract details look like. Does this mean that we're out on some names like Juju? Maybe, maybe not. I'm going to lean maybe towards the negative just because, again, Bears have some money to play around with. Yeah, there's a lot of dead cap, but just a reminder, the cap's not really real at the end of the day. Like, let's stop pretending like that this is like a hard debt. They'll figure it out. That's just what they do. If a player really wants to play for the Bears, front office is going to figure it out. But yeah, it's not a terrible signing. What I think is really interesting, though, is that a lot of these Bears guys that have left from the Ryan Pace regime are very quickly finding new homes. And I think that's kind of a testament to maybe the fact that there was talent on this roster. It just wasn't fitting right. And I think that's something that we should look towards some of these guys, like an Alex Bars, like a Tease Tabor, who joined Alex Bars and going in a team where a bunch of other Bears are going. Tease went down to the Atlanta Falcons, right? Which is where Ryan Pace is working now. And a couple of other Bears have been signed. I think Elijah Wilkinson got signed by the Falcons as well. So there's a noticeable trend of Bears players going to Los Angeles, Chargers and Rams, Las Vegas, and Atlanta. And just mind you that Atlanta's offensive coordinator is former Bears passing game coordinator. And let's look at Brandon Staley, who's out in Los Angeles. He worked with Vic Fangio and the Chicago Bears. So there are connections, right? And these were all under the Pace regime. So you're starting to see these guys who are under Pace start bringing in the players that they were comfortable with. So that tells you that maybe, right, things were put together pretty well. It just they were missing that final piece. That might have been Matt Nagy. But we have to watch how these guys play out and are successful over the next couple of years as they enter these new roles with these new contracts. That's something that I'm really interested in watching.
Yeah, I want to talk about the Allen Robinson deal first because I believe it was somewhere around like 3 years, $45 million with, I think, $30 million, something like that, guaranteed. But I'm happy for Allen Robinson because he finally gets to play with Matt Stafford, who is, as sad as it sounds for someone going into his like 8th or 9th season, the best quarterback that he's ever had. But it's also partly Robinson's fault for choosing Mitch Trubisky over Aaron Rodgers all those years ago. I mean, I understand everyone thought Mitch was the future, but again, when there's a Hall of Fame quarterback that has an offer on the table for you or a team with a Hall of Fame quarterback, you would be stupid to not go ahead and take that offer. But anyways, outside of Allen Robinson, I mean, the Rams get done with the cap space, right? We knew Allen Robinson was going to sign somewhere, but there's something else to be said for all this is that these guys who have been starters for the Bears over the last couple of years, you have Bilal Nichols signing with the Raiders, Alex Bars signing with the Raiders. I want to talk about Nichols first because, well, Nichols and Bars, they're both, one's an offensive lineman, the other's a defensive lineman. But just getting beyond that, you see that Champ Kelly is essentially the assistant general manager in in Las Vegas. So he's got one of the loudest voices in the room. Now, Bars is interesting because 3 years ago, when Alex Bars was coming into the league as an undrafted free agent, he had offers on the table from two teams, the Bears and the New England Patriots. Now, he chose the Bears because at the time, his college offensive line coach, Harry Heinstein, had also been hired by the Bears. Now, what's the significance in this? The reason the Patriots were interested in Bars all those years ago is simply because the Patriots love to have those versatile offensive linemen that can pretty much play anywhere. And so Josh McDaniels being the lead dog in Las Vegas now, for a fact that they were definitely high on Alex Bars. You add that in along with Champ Kelly connection, there's a lot that's going on there. You look at Bilal Nichols at Delaware in college, he played as a 4-3 defensive tackle. The Bears didn't see enough from him to really warrant and justify him coming back. And so he lands in Vegas where he's going to be playing 4-3 nose tackle once again. You look at Wilkinson and Tabor, there's something to be said. Tabor, first things first, can play cornerback and safety. And then also you look at Elijah Wilkinson. I mean, he can play left tackle or right tackle. But what sticks out to me in Atlanta, because they also just signed former Bears running back Damian Williams, what sticks out to me in Atlanta is that one of the personnel executives there in Ryan Pace is close to Falcons general manager Terry Fontenot. And so, because those guys were together in New Orleans, and those guys have a tight relationship. That basically tells me that Ryan Pace has such a loud voice in the Falcons organization. He's technically like the right hand man. I personally would not be surprised to see him get another GM interview in a couple of years just because of the way that he does have talent. Now, what are these 5-6 guys signing around the league and getting picked up basically as the first wave dies down here is that these guys were all talented. Ryan Pace did right by the Bears by building and finding talented players, but ultimately it's the coach who's responsible for putting the product together on the field, and the coach didn't do that. And so essentially, as a result, right? Yeah, the Bears are starting all over again. But these guys, I mean, Nichols, Bars, they're all going to have a chance to start. Wilkinson, Tabor, Williams are going to be more so just rotational pieces, but there's definitely enough there for a guy like a Wilkinson to start.
Yeah, before we head out of here, because unfortunately Bears haven't really done a lot outside of 2 or 3 signings here, and then just now as we're recording, we're going to discuss the potential signings that we could be bringing in, or at least that are rumored, and we'll have to watch where those go, specifically based off of the Deshaun Watson trade. We're looking at Lil Collins out of the Dallas Cowboys, who was just released. And then as well as a few other players that are maybe holding up on waiting to see where that trade comes out. There's not a lot of rumors connected to Juju, which is kind of weird. Maybe he's looking at where this trade comes out as well. And then as well as a particular tackle out of New Orleans, right? So we're just kind of holding with our hands under our seats, just waiting to see what happens with Deshaun Watson. It's looking every day like he's probably going to the Atlanta Falcons. Or the New Orleans Saints. My bet, again, I like the Falcons here. I don't think they have much money to throw around, a potential recontract. But I just think that there's that hometown connection. And maybe there's more of an opportunity for him to shine there. And there's definitely more of an opportunity for him to build himself up there as kind of a redefine who he is as an image piece. His icon was Michael Vick, right, growing up. And if there's anyone who is able to leave one team, join another team, and completely rebrand himself as a likable guy again, it was Michael Vick. Like, let's not forget what he did. Same with Deshaun Watson. Let's not forget what he did. But from his perspective, what's the best thing for him? Maybe go back to your childhood favorite team and compete for a ring, and people are going to remember you fondly instead of the terrible things you may or may not have done. But that's kind of what we're waiting on here, at least for the Bears. Ryan Poles, again, reiterated second and third wave. We're starting to enter that second wave here. A lot of the big contracts have already gone. We're starting to see the contracts stabilize. Market's getting really, sitting down as well. But at least for some of the rest of the big names, specifically on the offensive side of the ball, we're waiting on whether or not Ryan Pace is going to get his second crack around at picking up Deshaun Watson. He didn't the first time. This is an opportunity for him to do it this time. And I'm not ready for all of the storylines that come out that say Ryan Pace's second shot goes with Deshaun Watson this time instead of Mitchell Trubisky. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. We will. Anyways, when just quick thoughts here as I update our social media talking about the St. Brown signing, because this is what happens is my phone's always going off and stuff. But the Terron Armstead signing, right? It's going to be something where whatever happens, happens. But then again, you look at this team, and I think, a guy like a Brian Bulaga, for example, who's 33, could be a really good one-year stopgap solution. We just saw Fletcher Cox get released. And I'm not saying the Bears are going to sign Fletcher Cox to play 4-3 defensive tackle, but there's a lot of good vets on the market that certainly would go ahead and make sense for Chicago. So ultimately, when you look at this, I'm not going to say things are looking up for the Bears. Things are certainly starting to take shape in terms of what Ryan Poles is trying to do. Now, that all should really show that, okay, the Bears know what their floor and ceiling is, but you can also expect the Bears to be competitive in 2022. And that's just throwing that out there for all the people who think that 2022 is a complete wash and it's time for 2023, which, by the way, side note, all the people that are like, oh, the Bears have like $120 million in cap space next year. There's 2 reasons for that. Number one, you don't have a lot of players under contract. Number 2, it's going to be a relatively cheap roster. And number 3, don't think that just because the Bears have 120 something million in cap next offseason that they're going to be big spenders in free agency. Absolutely not. Okay. So yeah, just hold your horses, be patient, keep watching this. Now, because Max has got corned beef cooking and it's March Madness, and I have another meeting to jump into. This is only going to be like 20 minutes, guys. So we're going to get out of here. Make sure you're following us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at FireSideBears. Follow myself and Max on Twitter at MaxSmithySM and at Usayd Social. Comment, like, subscribe, guys, to the YouTube channel. Rate, review us 5 stars on all podcasting platforms. We're going to get out of this thing. Bear down, y'all. Have a great rest of your day. We'll catch you guys later. See ya.